Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the very first Zero Defects Manufacturing Platform Project Open Call 1 webinar. I'd like to tell you in advance that the webinar is being recorded and it will be made available to you afterwards as well on the ZDMP website. This webinar is one of two webinars that's designed to support you if you intend to apply for the first open call. And my name is Keisha Taylor Wesseling. I'm from the University of Southampton, and I'll be moderating today. Also speaking will be Stefano Modaferri from the University of Southampton, who's a work package leader, Stuart Campbell, who's the project manager for the project from Information Catalyst, as well as Francisco Barrena from the Instituto Tecnológico de Informática, who's a technical lead. So the first session will last about 20 minutes, and Stuart, who's a project manager, will present, he will give a project overview, talk about what the objectives of the projects are, the objectives of the project are, and talk about the value proposition and present some pilot use cases. This will be followed by session 2, which will be presented by Stuart, which will be presented by Stefano, who will give an overview of the call, the different types of sub-projects and the types of applicants, the rules and regulations, and an overview of the support materials. And then this will be followed by the technical details, which will be provided by Francesco, who will talk about the platform architecture, key features, technologies, etc. And then this will end with an open discussion and a Q&A. So please put information about the Q&A questions that you have, place them in the Q&A, and we'll attempt to answer them. And any that we haven't been able to answer, we will answer in the following up on the FAQ section of our website. So now I hand you over to Stuart, who will present on the ZDMP project and the platform.
Okay, thank you, Keisha. Let me share my screen with you. Here we go. So Keisha, you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon to everybody, and thank you, Keisha, for the introduction. So I'm going to give you a fairly whirlwind tour of what is ZDMP in about 20 minutes, just to give you some context on the overall environment. Of course, there's information on the website, and a lot of our documents are all public. Actually, practically all our documents are public, so lots more information there as well. So moving on, this is the mission of our project, or let's say our marketing slogan. So, of course, you all, I'm sure, are aware of what is zero defects in terms of the right product at the right time, etc. And what we have wished to do in our particular project is to make a platform, components, a marketplace, and applications to allow external parties, which really means manufacturers, to achieve a zero defects philosophy. This is the infographic of the project to tell you most top level things you might be interested in. So we are quite a long project. We're 4 years. We're a big project as well. We've got actually 31 partners now. We had a new partner join fairly recently. We're also highly SME focused. Nearly 50% of our consortium is SMEs, and we're highly user centric as well. And then again, 50% of our consortium is SMEs. Another interesting feature we've got is that DIN. I'm sure all of you know DIN as German standards, is also part of our consortium. Whilst the funding we've got is 16 million, which is quite large. The actual call said you can give away up to 20% for sub-projects. And obviously that's what we're talking about today. In fact, we were very generous, I think, in what we proposed, and we're giving away the full 20% to subcore partners, which hopefully will be some of you if you make successful bids and win. Around 1 million of that is in the first call, and 2 million of that is in the second call. So I'm going to move on. One thing I will just mention is the partnership. So I'm sure there are some names maybe you've never heard of, such as Information Catalyst and some other SMEs. But also you see there are some big players in this as well, such as Ford, such as Continental, some of the research institutes who you may know about, like ICALAN, for example, and a whole mixture of parties to make our kind of aspiration successful. So what is our objective? The overall objective of the project is to provide a platform, both on-premise and in cloud, to allow zero defect solutions. So unsurprisingly, it's about the overall quality, and we're addressing that both at the product level, but also the process level, both within individual organizations and across organizations as well. It's a kind of crossover between a factories project and an ICT project. So an awful lot of it is software technology to allow zero defects, either through components, applications, through algorithms, etc. Although there is some, let's say, light hardware activity as well, but primarily in the interfacing of different forms of equipment. Of course, you know, we're doing some things which will be familiar to you. There's IoT involved, data acquisition, interoperability, process orchestration. So what we have done is got a whole suite of interoperable components which we think will help you and also other partners we're engaged with to achieve zero defects. In the original topic, which ZDMP was lucky enough to win, in fact, we came first in our particular strand. One of the things they wanted is kind of 4 pillars: platform building, large scale, ecosystem, and standardization. And these subcores fit very much into this ecosystem building pattern. Of course, we are 31 partners, but there's a few more than 31 companies interested in zero defects in Europe, and we want to expand our ecosystem as much as possible, and obviously these subcores are a way of doing this. In terms of the building blocks, the kind of bricks of our project, Francisco is going to go to talk about those in more detail later on, but let's say unsurprisingly, it's a core set of services, components for things like security. There are some things specific to product quality, some things specific to process quality, and then about the building of applications, and finally putting all of those things into some pilots, which I'll briefly mention a little bit later. In terms of where we are, I suggested we are already 2 years in, just over 2 years in. We've done an awful lot of development to date, probably more than most projects, I would say. But the development does continue at perhaps a slightly slower rate for the next 2 years. But the main things about year 3 and year 4, which are 2021, 2022, are the deployment of the technology in various phases in our pilots, and also the deployment and use of our technology in the subcores. And of course, you can see right now we're at the preparation phase for call 1. And call 2 will come a little bit later in the year, so please do keep your eye out for that as well, because you can equally join us. It has a kind of slightly different focus, but an awful lot of commonality with what you're hearing call 1 as well. So what is it all about? Well, this is our overall picture. It's about creating this digital platform for smart factories, for factories which are interested in digitization in Industry 4.0. And it's trying to put a toolkit together which allows this. We like to think we've got some principles around this, but in some ways these are fairly buzzwordy. But perhaps the two important ones are really interoperability and openness. So we've spent a lot of time making sure that the components are being offered or integratable and not interoperable between themselves. And you will see that an awful lot of components have open interfaces, and many, perhaps even most, are open source. So open source is not compulsory in this, but certainly it can be attractive in certain environments. So looking at that in a little bit more detail, what is the practicality of it all? The call was about a multi-sided marketplace. So what we're trying to do is achieve that with a range of different stakeholders. So for example, if you are a user company with the zero defects problem, you can come to ZDMP, you can buy, for example, existing applications and components and services. We call them ZDMP assets. But we go even a little bit beyond something like the App Store, that you can also ask for new features as well, or new applications. So of course, eventually, or not eventually, but in the first place, perhaps, those need to be built by somebody. So there are software companies, some of them generic, some of them specific to the field in question, building these tools and using our SDK to kind of link things together and produce software. Similarly, we have some manufacturing infrastructure organizations, meaning, for example, equipment suppliers or production line parties, or even, factory kind of buildings. You can imagine them as manufacturing infrastructure. And we no doubt need to link to many of those different devices. And so they need device drivers and APIs, etc. And again, they can be on the marketplace. Systems integrators, we have them in the project to a certain degree, but we figure that most of the integration or the systems integrators will be quite kind of already in contact with the individual manufacturers. But certainly systems integrator is a kind of target market for ZDMP, so they can use our technology with their users to make or integrate solutions. And similarly, so as well as software technology, we do have the more kind of hardware aspect of technology, and they will provide or use or include zero defect features as well. And we represent that all as part of the ZDMP platform and set it on the ZDMP marketplace. Of course, there are some orthogonal concepts. I mentioned the marketplace. It's not too surprising to see privacy and security is pervasive throughout this. SME friendly, open source. Tools for developer, that's another critical thing. We guess there will be quite a few technology providers here today. And the overall aim, though, is to make a business opportunity through the marketplace, not only for ourselves, but for all you guys and potential other future parties as well. These are the building blocks. We hinted at some of these before. Some of these we go into a little bit more detail, and as suggested, there's various material on the web. We've got quite extensive blogs, for example, on many different things. For those of you involved in Horizon 20, it won't surprise you too much to see this represents our work package structure. And for those of you, for example, aren't involved in Horizon 2020, then I suggest you look at that to get some context. But you see several layers of features and components which we're actually including and making available. I suggested we'd look at the pilots, but to be honest, fairly superficially in the time available. We've got 4 main pilots: automotive, machine tool, electronics, and construction. And coupled with that, we have a cross-domain demonstrator to link them all together. And from each sector, there is a range of customers and suppliers and providers, etc. Some of you might be puzzled why construction is there, but actually it's a very interesting use case. I think construction is kind of the ultimate factory. Yeah, you build the factory, and then actually the factory becomes the product, and then the factory disappears. So this is a nice case study we have, and it's also nice because there's a lot of SME partners involved. We have an experimentation facility provided by Tampere. I'll talk about that in a moment. And based around that is a reference implementation, which might be useful for you in these calls. So the experimentation facility is, you can see a nice picture of that there. And this is a kind of screenshot from the website. So more information available. But within your bids, it's possible, and we hope at least some of you can use the experimentation facility. Currently, it's configured to make kind of dummy mobile phones, perhaps unsurprising. Tampere is in Finland, of course, so you can see a small connection there. But it's not compulsory to do this, but we just hope that you can take advantage of that and some of the data sets as well that they've got to offer. This is an example of one ecosystem we have. You see it's quite some complex change. Machine tool providers provide the electronics industry, and they go on to make molds that provides to the automotive industry in Ford. And we've got a similar set of chains in construction as well. So whilst again, it's not compulsory that you have long chains that you might wish to consider. Certainly that can be an element, or it could be a zero defects ideal, just focusing on one one set of companies in a much more tight field. We have a series of use cases. There's about 13 use cases, and actually internally we expect to generate around 40 individual applications in our pilots. You will see at the bottom a very nice link. I'm not suggesting you make a note of that now, but actually if you look on our website and some of the documents available, you will see material and quite extensive use case documents which may be of use to you. But I want to stress, we're neither kind of looking to say you cannot do exactly the same thing as in these use cases, but neither are we saying that you shouldn't go into other domains as well. In fact, we do hope perhaps the tendency is more for other domains, but if it's in the same domain, then you should look at kind of expanding the zero defects horizon. So this is another one in machine tools. I'm just giving you a flavor of what we're looking at. Another one, for example, this is building instrument clusters in the electronics industry using X-ray tomography. We have our construction cases. They're dealing with pipes and stones, etc. And again, it's quite interesting one, the stone case, because for stone kind of manufacture or cutting, the same kind of product can both be.
Stuart, 2 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. The same product can both be a kind of a fault and a great thing for construction at the very same time. So one of the interesting things we've done is we've constructed a company called I4FS. That's the shareholders of many of the partners, Industry 4 Factory Solutions. We've established that. It's a legal entity. It's actually joined the project, and it will act as the exploitation vehicle of ZDMP running the marketplace. So it's also a startup, like maybe some of you guys, but we hope that you can work with them also to exploit your zero defect solutions. Just a few final words in the last minutes about the core, but Stefano is going to tell you more. This is where we are now, core 1, and you can see the focus is very much about components. Core 2 will include components, but be slightly more orientated to ZAPs in the entire platform. So definitely now the focus is towards components, but not only components. And that's divided into what we call the develop, integrate, and validate. Again, Stefan will tell you more, but I suppose our expectation at least is that probably there will be more bids in the develop area, and less in the validate area, which is fairly natural. Although from a mechanical point of view, we kind of don't have any preference or limits to either. It purely depends on which are the best bids. Lots of information on the website. I mentioned some of the things, the webinars, the FAQ, the experimentation facility. So please do explore that. One of the things we've tried to do is to make this process as easy as possible. So this is an example of a kind of one of the parts of the forms you will need to fill in. This is an example of a task. And actually the task is kind of already written for you. So the idea is to make the application as simple as possible, as low demanding, so you can focus on the real work instead of the administration. Francisco at the end is going to tell you an awful about the technology. It fits into several tiers, several components, and we hope you can, of course, add to this stack. Documentation, we would like to think we've got an awful lot of documentation available for you at this stage of the project. We've been in subcalls before where there's been kind of no documentation, so we know it can be difficult. I'm sure it's not as complete as maybe you would like it because it's still ongoing, but certainly do explore the documentation side. The I4FS platform is up and running, but it's still kind of a startup website, so it's certainly a lot more needs to be there. But the idea is to take this and make it the marketplace for our entire ecosystem. So that is a little bit of the high level view. Just over, I guess, in terms of timing. So as Keisha said, we're going to take all the questions at the end, although please do feel free to type them in the chat now. And Keisha, over to you, please.
Thank you, Stuart. So now we're going to pass on to Stefana, who will present about the open call, give an introduction to the open call one. Just some more details on that. Stefan?
Hello, give me 1 second. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
No? Do you see my screen?
I can see it.
Yes, I see it. Thank you.
Okay. So let me do this. And now you see the right one.
Yes.
Okay, great. And you see also myself. That's the least interesting part. Hello, everyone. And this is Stefano Modafferi. I'm from the University of Southampton, and I'm work package leader on the open calls. Let me say immediately why we want to have this the subcall or open call. We want to build an ecosystem. This is a very common word that has many meanings, but basically it is about networking. It is about joint exploitation of ideas and software. It is not possible for even a large group as the project components to do everything on our own. So we, from the ZDMP point of view, we want your help. And from the EC point of view, this will increase the ecosystem. And from your point of view, it is an opportunity for get some funding for further developing your components and to tap into a market, maybe the market you are already in or a new one. What we offer 10 to 15 sub-projects that are value between 50,000 and 150,000. And it is important you will own and exploit whatever you produce. And the opportunity, this will give you the opportunity to develop new relationships within the industry 4.0 domain. There are many types of projects. I will go in detail in a minute, and you will get support during the submission and throughout the project duration. The timeline is this, and this is pretty tight. We have opened the call the 1st of March. We will close it the 30th of April, and there is not extension. It's a firm deadline. Then we will evaluate the results, and we will do the contracting with a start that is foreseen for August or September 2021. There are 3 broad activities: the development, the integration, and the validation and testing. The development needs to create new components for the enhancement of the platform. and to provide new services. It is about high quality components that can extend and complement existing functionality and capabilities of the platform. This call is mainly targeting SME technology providers, of developers, research institutes, and developers. The amount is for all of these calls between 50 and 150K. The development is, for instance, new design time, runtime, zero defect smart manufacturing components, or new AI machine learning solutions, or extending functionalities of the platform. This is not a prescriptive list. It's just some ideas of what our view of this type of sub-projects. The second type of calls are integration, of proposals and integration, and the aim is to extend the ZDMP functionality by integrating existing components, service, or other platform. Here, the target is again the SME technology providers, software developers, but also this is particularly important if you are already part or you own other components that are in production within other platforms. The last one is about integration, and the integration is about this is about the integration. So that's what these are examples: the integration of third-party components, interoperability with other platform, or integration of ZDMP components within other processes, component, and tools. The third type is validation, and this is about validating the platform and the components. And again, the target audience is the same. These calls are about demonstrating that what we do is soundly from a technical point of view, from a business point of view, and it is ready for an uptake in the market. Exemplars are the functional validation of ZDMP components in cloud or premises within workflow, or deploying around ZDMP components in smart manufacturing domain scenarios. And we can also have technical validation that are like tests about message bus, API, gateway, SSO, marketplace, and the likes. And the testing one is about benchmarking the components in a range of smart manufacturing domains and scenario. The type of applicants. So the target of the audience is EU SMEs and EU technology providers and software developers, EU manufacturing and supply chain, and EU research institutes and university. Though the single applicant must be an SME and it needs to meet the eligibility criteria. It is possible to have a small consortia of at most 2 components, one of which should be an SME. You will have lots of support material. You have and activities. You have dedicated email submission support. You can download the code documentation. You have the technical information for the ZDMP available at the link. You can have access to an FAQ page and to general information. It is important to say that the guide for applicants is the authoritative document. So we have put all possible attention to make things consistent, but if you find anything that is different from the guide for applicants and anywhere else, like the website or the documentation, what matters and what has the final word is the guide for applicants. The submission process is through a website called F6S. Most of you should be familiar with that. And you will have to download the proposal template, the declaration of honor, and the ethics statement from the website at zdmp.eu resources. And then you have to upload the completed documents to f6s.com ZDMP apply. It is a straightforward website, pretty easy to use, but if you encounter any problem, drop us an email and we will be able and happy to support you. Now, a bit of rules and regulation. You can apply more than once, but only the highest ranking proposal will be funded. You should answer each question in the template. If you feel that something doesn't apply to your case, just explain why. Don't answer but explain why. You need to be clear, concise, and respect the instruction about the length of each answer. Consider that the total length is 15 pages. You need to think that we are an informed audience. We are all from the domain, but we are not we don't know exactly your business or specific niche. So don't think we don't know anything, but also don't think we know everything. Give us the right level of information to understand what is your proposal about. Do not include anything that is to external documents, a website, or anything like that, because we will not look at that. So it's like you didn't put anything there. The eligibility requirements must be met. There is a limit in the proposal page. And last but not least, remember to sign all the documents, especially the declaration or your proposal is at risk of being rejected. This is very important, and the common mistake, maybe you don't want to do it, you just say I'll do it later, you don't do it, and you get rejected. That's the case. The total financial support awarded to sub-project winners will be according to the 70% if you are profit companies or 100% if you are non-profit. The minimum of 70–80% of the open call funding will go to only SMEs. Consortia are subject to the same funding restriction and standard AI funding rights for bidding organization within the EC. Subcontractor parties will typically be funded at 100% by the sub-project beneficiary, means by you. However, this is an agreement between you and them. You will be funded back at 70%, or anyway at your correct rate. The IPR, the sub-project winners will own the outputs of their open call and will be free to exploit. Where relevant, sub-projects will list the outputs on the marketplace free of charge for 1 year after the end of the project, with any sales generating revenue for the sub-project business and commission associated with it. Following that, relevant sub-projects outputs will need to be hosted for 1 year on the platform. Ongoing hosting will be subject to bilateral negotiation, and the cost will need to be part of an hosting agreement that will be done with I4FS. The testing reports or the validation results that are expected to be test reports must be provided free of charge to anyone for a limited period after the end of the project. The detailed conditions are available at the link that you see there. Be aware that there is a second call that is going to launch in August, and it's more focusing on creating applications. So this first call is about components. The second one will be about application using the components, targeting the end users. And basically, this is it for now. I think Kisha is back to you.
Okay, thank you, Stefano. We're now going to move on to Francisco, who's going to talk about the technical details. Francisco?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kisha. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, let's start. Thank you all for attending to this webinar. I'm Francisco, technical manager of ZDMP, and I'm going to show you an overall vision of the technical foundations and features of ZDMP. I hope you find it useful and interesting. Okay, these are the objectives of this talk. Basically, the main aim is to know the key aspects of the ZDMP architecture, where to find more technical information, and know what components are available and their main features. And at the end, I will finalize showing you a use case example. Okay. In the first place, the ZDMP use intensively Docker and Kubernetes. And depending on what you are going to develop, the knowledge of those technologies are more or less required. CDMP has components that hide the complexity of these technologies, but depending on your needs, you will need to know them. If you are thinking to work with machine learning algorithms, CDMP provides also several components that makes your life easier, and the platform offers support also for Python and H2O based models based on Java. The technical foundations of CDMP are basically these: container first, extensible, distributed, composable, secure, and interoperable platform. I recommend you to check out these foundations offline in more detail using the link that appears on the screen. And of course, you need to know how CDMP works and which features are available for you. Okay, well, this is the full architecture of CDMP. As you can see, there are a lot of components. We will explain some of them more deeply later. But what I want to remark here is that CDMP has two important flows. The first flow relates to the industry and the manufacturing process, in which the data is acquired, processed, and computed using the edge tier. It's the flow that comes from the bottom of the chart. Once the data is ready, it's passed to the platform tier and then moved to the adequate subsystem for their processing or storing. Finally, the enterprise tier goes into action and adds more features like security and so on, and allowing the users to consume the data easily. The second flow is more related to developers and comes from the top of the chart. It's related to developers, data analysts, and in general users who want to develop or create something into CDMP. In this case, the entry point is the developer tier, in which the users can use components to develop applications or another components or machine learning models to simulate conditions or to make decisions. Of course, these components use again the layers described in the previous flow. If you want more information about the overall architecture, I recommend you again to check carefully the link that appears on the screen. So remember, CDMP is modular and extensible, and this is thanks to the components, the core components that are the components already in the platform, and the C components. A C component is a software which consumes CDMP core components to extend CDMP's features. This software may be only a frontend, which uses CDMP's APIs, or may have more complexity, including their own backends, APIs, or databases. This is one of the things we expect from you in these open calls: develop new C components that will extend the CDMP features, adding more value to the platform. But first, you need to know what the features are and the technical details of every core components of CDMP. You can visit for that software.cdmp.eu site, in which all the technical documentation related to components and architecture is available. It includes details such as OpenAPI specs that you can use and all the important things of every component. What the component does, how to do it, how to install it, how to use it, and what are the relationships between components in the CDMP architecture. So just go to the site, press on the Go to Docs button, and you can navigate through the left menu organized by tiers to know more details about a component, or you can go into a single component and you can find the table of contents in the right, the table of contents here, or in the right menu, and a summary table with the main resources of that component. I suggest you to watch the videos of those components that are of your interest, because it's a good 3 or 4 minutes summary. And of course, you have the OpenAPI specs available also in this website. Okay, before we go into the detail of the components, let me tell you some key aspects of the architecture. In the first place, CDMP has been built with security in mind. All the communications go through the service bus. It's basically an API gateway, in which several security controls are considered. In addition, all the CDMP components are continuously monitored in real time, including all processes they are running, raising warnings in case of security events or anomalies. And finally, the identity management and authorization of the whole platform is centralized using a key cloak technology. This is the interface of the service bus. It's an API gateway. As you can see, every request has several security checkpoints and a lot of features. Okay. Another key aspect is the data interoperability. The data acquisition is of paramount importance in any manufacturing process, and ZDMP complies with the most used industrial protocols, especially OPC UA, Modbus, CAN bus, and Profibus. For other protocols, a specific adapter is required. In any case, there are components in the ZDMP architecture that allows you to deploy these adapters easily. Also, ZDMP handles internally MQTT and AMPQ protocols, and this enables an easy integration. And if you are thinking about artificial intelligence and machine learning, ZDMP also offers several AI technologies. You can use a set of algorithms and technologies that ZDMP brings to you based on H2O, Docker, and Python, or you can upload your custom AI algorithms based on Python. Okay, so let's show some component features. The first one is the data acquisition component, which allows to manage external data sources and bring data into ZDMP. As we said before, it's capable of handling several protocols like OPC UA, Modbus, CAN bus, or Profibus, but also can retrieve data from an API, a REST API. Provides also a graphical interface which requires minimal to non code writing. The underlying technologies are Cumulosity from Software AG and Node-RED. It's a well-known low-code application. Once the data is acquired, usually it needs to be transformed. For doing that, we can use the data harmonization component, in which you can design, manage, and execute data transformations and extract hidden value from data with semantic functionalities like ontologies and so on. In this screen's picture, you can see an easy transformation of data. In this case, it's only a subset of the original data, but you can perform quite complex data transformation with it. Another important component is the service and message bus. The service bus is a central place for managing all APIs, the API gateway of the whole platform, to apply global policies, and also provides several out-of-the-box features for APIs like versioning, analytics, etc. Okay. On the other hand, the message bus provides publish subscribe messaging to the whole platform. It's based on Rabbit MQ and supports both MQTT and AMQP protocols. It's the preferred way to interchange data between components. And as developers of a C component, it's highly probable you will use it. But of course, it's not mandatory. There are no mandatory components at all. Virtually, all the components of ZDMP are executed in the application runtime, which is a component that provides an underlying generalist runtime based on Kubernetes and Rancher. And this is closely related also to Docker, as you probably know. This component brings scalability and versatility to ZDMP. Again, as a C components developers, you have a high probability that your C components will be deployed at the application runtime. But again, it's not mandatory. Your component can run in any other infrastructure. Another interesting component is the portal. This component provides, sorry, I missed myself. This component provides common functionalities in a consistent way in all ZDMP, like common login, logout, or consistent navigation through components and so on. So it's an interesting component also. Another interesting component is the secure authentication and authorization. The main aim of this component is to provide authentication and authorization, and provides also 2FA authentication automatically if the context of the user has changed. Okay, we can. I think I need more time to talk of all the components. Those are the most important. The storage component is so important also because you probably need to store some data here. And you have also another components for AI analytics, machine learning, like the AI analytics designer, the AI analytics runtime, and you can build your applications using another components like the application builder. For example, is a component that brings an IDE for you to develop components inside ZDMP. Okay, you have all the components pretty well described in the public documentation. You have here all those links. And finally, I want to share with you a small example of use of ZDMP. Let's imagine that we want to perform anomaly detection in our manufacturing process. Okay, the first step will be to acquire the data from the production line. If our production line talks the same protocols than ZDMP, which is highly probable, you can ingest the data directly using the data acquisition component. If no, you will need to deploy a custom connector to transform the protocols of your production line to a protocol that ZDMP understands. Okay. Once the data is acquired, you can use the data harmonization component to transform the data to be easier to consume, to reduce the size, or to ignore useless data. Once the data is transformed, can be stored in the storage component or can be pushed to the message bus. Okay, that's the case of this example. The data is pushed to a topic of the message bus, named, for example, data to detect anomalies. Okay, the product assurance runtime in this case, which is the component that performs the anomaly detection, is watching that topic and retrieves the data once it's available. This component performs their operations, in this case using machine learning, and when the result of the anomaly detection is ready, it's passed to another topic of the message bus, named, for example, anomaly detection results, in which every component interested on that result will be subscribed. Okay. That's the case of the monitoring and alerting component, which is subscribed to the anomaly detection results topic I said before. So once the data is available, it's consumed by this component. Monitoring and alerting reads the result, and if the result is anomaly detected, creates and sends an alert to the C component, for example, C anomaly detection, which shows the alert to the adequate user, for example, an operator of the production line. Of course, behind the scenes, there are a lot of components involved, like the secure.
Francesco, 2 minutes, and it seems some people think that, I mean, I'm seeing you fine, but it seems some people think that your screen is stuck on the portal slide. So,
It's stuck in the portal? I move a lot of slides.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry. Don't know why. Okay.
And 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm finishing. Of course, behind the scenes, there are a lot of components involved, like the security, authentication, and authorization, application runtime, AI analytics runtime, and so on. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share. I'm sorry if the slides get stuck in the portal. In any case, you can check out the slides later. Please remember that you have all the documentation ready at software.cdmp.eu. Thanks very much for your attention, and I hope it has been interesting and useful. And now I give the floor to Keisha, who will continue with this session.
Okay, thanks a lot, Francesco. I am going to share my screen. Now we are going to go to the Q&A session. Yes, so some of y'all have put questions in the Q&A. So thank you for that. And if you have any other questions, please continue to put them in there and we will try our very best to answer them. After the Q&A, we have a short wrap up by Stuart, and then we'll close. So The first question was from Man. He asks, how can we log into your platform in order to examine and to understand where we can implement it? A brief, can someone talk about this?
Yes, I think I can. There is, first, thanks for the question. There is no need for now to log in any platform. You may access to the documentation to the different components where you may find specific information. I think the best resource here is the software.cdmp.eu, in which you can check out all the technical details about and a lot of videos showing what are the features of every component.
I think I'd just like to add to that, say also, let's put it into a little bit more practical context as well. The ZDMP project is 2 years in, so we think actually we've done a fairly good job in terms of having software which is kind of ready and tested compared with many other projects. But still, the project has got 2 years to run, so we're kind of going in parallel with two strands, trying to add new features and still develop on the existing things. So there are some components which are more developed than other ones. And in particular, I would say for the platform, that's due for the next schedule slightly. Okay, that's more related to the second call, as you perhaps saw earlier. Of course, that's not to say it's not kind of usable, and indeed the kind of portal aspects are particularly valid, and some of the security aspects, but it's a kind of a mixed things of different levels.
Okay, thank you. The second question is from Gerardo. He says, we are an SME and we are considering going with a partner, a research center. And my question is, could both partners be from the same country?
So I can take this one as well. Again, the answer is fairly clear. We're pretty liberal, I would say, with most aspects. You know, it's open to UK, Europe, associated countries. The main criteria are really is the SME must be the focus. Okay, it doesn't matter what kind of SME, whether it's a manufacturing SME or a technology SME, but they must be the focus. So if it's only a one person bid, then of course it's an SME. If it's a 2-person bid, the SME should be the focus, but they might be supported by other people. In terms of which countries and maybe some other parameters, it's completely open, basically.
Anyone else want to add anything? If no, okay, the next question is from Jose, and he asks, he says, we have a system for plastic injection machines. It understands the machine's status considering defective products and okay products. Can we integrate it into your platform? I guess this is a good one for Francisco.
Yeah, yes, basically the short answer is yes. There are components from ZDMP that allows you to add the data of your system, even the defective products and okay products, and that's a good idea for machine learning if you are thinking about that. So yes, the answer is yes. Of course, you need to talk the protocols that I said before. If your machine does not talk that protocols, you need to develop a small component that traduce the protocol of your machine to the protocol of ZDMP. But it's a pretty straightforward component.
Okay, thank you.
This is Stefano. If I can add on that, this answer was perfect and generally of interest for anyone. we will not be able to answer in this webinar or even in emails to some questions of the type, I have this idea, does it fit? Or I have this idea, can I do this? These are too specific and questions that would not be possible or even fair to answer. So if you have any specific question on our side, then happy to answer. It's up to you to decide how and to what extent you can integrate and what is the solution you propose to achieve that goal. We will not be able to answer these emails, not now and not in emails later. Please consider it when you approach us with your questions.
Okay. And you have another question from Joshua. His question is, to what extent will the new projects get access to the already existing ZDMP components, example APIs, SDK, and if commercial systems of the partners are used, whether the new projects will get access to those systems or whether these would need to be purchased?
Okay, so let me take this one. So I give some fairly quick answers to these ones here. Maybe I address some of the other ones as well. So in essence, everything is open to you. There are some IPR kind of parameters on the web. So there's a full set of IPR statements. An awful lot of the technology is open source anyway, but there are a few parts which aren't, and they have some kind of specific explanations for them. In general, within the subcores, you have full access, and afterwards in a commercial thing, again, if it's a commercial thing, there are some kind of statements on the IPR definition which goes into those details. But the principle is to try to make this as accessible as possible, and we of course understand that that means there are some commercial kind of links and dependencies that need to be considered. The second question, the open question from Mahmood, if we had new features, pipeline, will they be open source as ZDMP? I think that answer is addressed. But it also goes on to the business model. So the platform business model is like any platform, yeah? It is intended to take a percentage in commission. Okay, so if it is commercialized and you choose to take advantage of the ZDMP marketplace to do that, there will be a commercial arrangement in place eventually, so that both the platform owner, in this case I4FS, gets some benefit simply to maintain the platform and all the features of it and develop new things, and also of course the vast majority will go to those parties you know, creating the components or integrating into things. So the ideal is it will be an additional channel with some let's say typical referral fee to do this, and you know, as time goes on in the project, the exploitation material will be quite kind of open as well in that sense. The next one is, how can we know which components currently need an upgrade? Well, that's quite an interesting question. I think the honest answer is, well, most components will need an upgrade because it's a kind of continuous development process, and we hope even beyond the project they will also need an upgrade. You know, please don't forget this is open core 1, halfway into the project, so you know, don't be under the aspiration that every single one of these components is commercial grade software. Okay, that's simply not the case, but they do go in that direction more than, for example, in other types of EU project, and then different components are at different levels of maturity, and it's hence also why we've included things like the validation tasks as well to determine that. Then the next question is about the funding regime. So yes, the answer is these are 70% funded essentially, but it's through a lump sum funding mechanism, so it's quite easy. So there's no heavy tracking of timesheets and entries into very complicated EU systems, but there is obviously some management of that. But you need to provide that other 30%. Typically, or typically, I think always, that 30% is coming in the form of additional resources. It's not cash that you are providing, but you would be maybe focusing some of your own resources to do this anyway. Because typically on all these calls, it should be something you would want to do anyway, right? And this is just helpfully giving you some funding, which will allow you to do it a little bit faster, right? So, and this is relatively typical for sub project funding in innovation actions, which is got 70%, and certainly this is mandatory for this part of the commission. So, Keisha, I think that's all the questions, right? Are we opening it up? Please, yeah, please.
No, just to say on this specific point, it is a lump sum, and somehow we trust you, but you need to have record. Should be we required of making audits by the Commission. So we don't want to see it, but you need to keep track of the money spent on the 70% funded and 30% contributed, so that you can prove it on an audit. Should this be? Usually it doesn't happen, but it is important that we say that it could happen.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, so now Stuart will continue, and he will just briefly wrap up before we close.
Okay, so hopefully this has been a relatively quick session. I think the key thing is really to look at the website, look at the material. As Stefano said, you know, important is to look at the frequently asked questions. It's very important you go there first, because we need to give kind of generic answers to everybody. We can't specifically help individuals, you know, individuals out, right? So take advantage of all the material. The key messages I just want to remind you of, it's about SMEs, this call. Other people can help in subsidiary roles, which generally means a consortium, but then only a consortium of a maximum of 2 people. You need to focus on one activity, okay? So it's not a question of combining everything equally, but you can include subsidiary elements of the other activities as well. That would be entirely natural. We have many different components. We hope that you will use some of our components, and the more the merrier. But equally, it can be justified that you might not use any. You might have a really amazing new zero defects technology you would simply like to make available for other parties. Now, finally, this will be evaluated between internal and external evaluators, and you and they need to judge what they think would be of most advantage in the entire system. But one thing I think we want to say is, don't simply say, right, ZDMP has 27 components and I need to make a project with all 27 components in, or 24 or 15. I personally would be a little bit surprised if many integration and development activities use multiple components. Maybe in the validation, they probably use a few more. I think the critical thing in this, we are looking for credible activity, not simply a wonderful proposal which isn't actually delivered. So in English, we kind of say less is more, and I think that might be something to think about. So credible proposals, please, not invented, promise the earth but never deliver type of proposals, especially remembering this is lump sum. So with lump sum, you promise something and you have to deliver it to get the lump sum. Open source, we hit that one. It's kind of can be advantage. For example, ICE is not an open source company, but we use it sometimes. So it's some good things and bad things. If it makes sense to you, use it, and if it doesn't make sense, don't use it. There are no great you know, restrictions. You don't have to use X component or Y component, but, you know, equally you should think about, well, if we want to launch a portal, then maybe integration with a portal or security could be quite interesting. Keisha, next slide, final slide. Okay, so a couple more things. Please use only the template to submit, and please only use F6S, right? So if we get an email from you with the proposal written on the back of an envelope, I'm afraid it's not really going to be successful, right? So the very first port of call is the FAQs, and, you know, if, as Stefan said, if you ask a very, very specific question, such as, will X work with Y, it's unlikely we get you an answer, because we kind of can't write your proposal for you. You need to take best advantage of the information available in the documentation and all the other supporting material in the FAQs. Remember, because I did a sub call in the past and the proposal looked very nice, and then suddenly we submitted, you know, an hour before, and suddenly figured out there were a few extra forms to complete as well. There are a few extra things to do, something on ethics, something on declaration of honor. I don't think they're too surprising for those of you who submitted before, and I don't think they're difficult, but remember that that there are a couple of other things to do. And then finally, remember, oh, there's two actual things, one I forgot. One is to submit on time. And the other thing is that the template you will see is very fixed on the number of pages and the pages per section, right? It slightly depends which route you take, but if I recall correctly, it's either a maximum of 15 pages or a maximum of 16 pages. And if you are 1 page longer, then you will be excluded, right? So it's not a question like the EU does to say, well, we will ignore your final 3 words on the page. We will exclude your entry, right? So please do look at the rules and the regulations of how to submit. You have 2 months to go. I think there's plenty of time. Indeed, I submitted one recently in 5 days before, and we won, right? So we think you know, these kind of sub calls are very open for SMEs and startups to apply, and really it's the good ideal that can make your proposal win, and your kind of credibility to actually deliver it. We do not intend in these calls to want loads and loads and loads of paperwork deliverables which just go on the shelf. What we want you to do is to develop your components, later develop applications, and then you get some business benefits of them as well. So that's it from me. That's it from the team here. So thank you, Keisha, and primarily the University of Southampton crew for organizing all of this, and to the other presenters and Yao in the background as well. I should say, by the way, that the next webinar, we might do a further one, but all the webinars will be the same. Okay, so it's not like the second webinar will go deeper into one particular technical area. And finally, do keep an eye on the, you know, on the website. If there are last minute updates, or maybe there are some different questions from the next webinar, they may also be of interest to you. And the videos will be available, I guess, certainly by Monday, but probably before. So Keisha, is there anything else, or are we done?
That's it. There was one last question. I think someone is trying to answer right now. But we will, if you have any other questions, please do continue, email us. The information, the email address to email us at is on the website under calls. And yeah, thank you.
Okay, guys, thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.